While the scope of the Royal Commission has been broadened, it will not include organisations such as sporting bodies, youth clubs or community groups such as Scouts. The final terms of reference haven't been made public yet, but in today's announcement, the government made clear the scope of the Royal Commission would focus on cases between 1950 and 1999, but Commission members will have some discretion to look outside of that time period. Sonja Cooper is a Wellington-based human rights lawyer who specialises in abuse cases and joins me now. Sonja, what do you feel about the time frame, 1950 to 1999, but with some discretion to look beyond those years? Is that good enough?
No, and I'm going to be really blunt about that. I know that we were part of a very strong advocacy group pushing for the time frame to come as far forward as possible into the current time, and that's really because for this Royal Commission to actually do a meaningful job, it needs to actually understand what's happening to children in care right now so that it can make recommendations about practice that will affect the children who are coming into care now and in the future. I think the problem with stopping it at the end of 1999, although with that discretion, is that we won't have those very current stories, and that will, I think, impede the veracity and in fact the integrity of the Royal Commission to actually be able to carry out a fundamental task, and that is that survivors were asking all the way through that what they wanted was to make sure that no other child going into care is abused. I think without credible data about what's happening to children in care, at least up until very recently, the Royal Commission's just simply not going to be able to undertake that task.
But Sonja, they are leaving the door open here, so they potentially could include cases outside of that and give themselves some current data.
I think we haven't seen the actual detail yet, and I, like you, no doubt, I've been watching out for the terms of reference to be released. I suspect that what happens is if you've got a foot in the door, so if, for example, you were in care between, say, 1945 and 1952, you'll be able to speak with the Royal Commission because you were in care after 1950. Similarly, I suspect that if you were in care in the 1990s and then you are still in care in the 2000s, you'll be able to present to the Royal Commission. But I suspect if you're clearly outside of that, you know, like your care finishes in 1949, for example, or your care only starts in 2000, that you may not be able to have a voice with the Royal Commission, and that's the concern. And I guess that's going to be in the detail. We haven't seen that yet.
Do you think it should be right up to current day, right up to children who are in care now?
I think we certainly advocated that it should be at the very latest through to the creation of Oranga Tamariki, which was last year. And, you know, we were happy to have, you know, kind of, I suppose, a line in the sand there, because at the end of the day, the government said, well, Oranga Tamariki is a new organisation, it's new legislation, we should, you know, let it get on with its work. So we were okay about it being to that point, which at least takes us right through to 2017. And that's a kind of a logical cut-off point, I think, as well.
So as it stands, sorry Sonja, but as it stands, how many of your clients would be excluded from this inquiry right now with the dates that have been presented?
Well, I had a look at that. So we've got 240 clients who were born after 1984. So some of them, I think, potentially will be excluded, but it's more the clients who were born after 1990, pretty much all of whom I think will be excluded, and we've got over 100 clients who were born after 1990. I mean, our youngest client was born in 2000.
So what does that mean? Their voices just simply will not be heard?
Well, I imagine that that's the case. As I say, there may be some, if some of those clients, I imagine, were in care in the 1990s, they might be able to get in. And as I say, that depends very much on what the detail says. And it may be too. I don't know. Again, if they're part of a whānau where, you know, their siblings were in care, they might get a voice, a backhand voice that way. But I think our concern is going to be that group, and that group is growing, I note, will have no voice. And really the only option that leaves for that group is litigation.
And what do they feel about that, to be left out?
Well, I know it's been a concern, and I mean, as of yet, they're just going to be hearing this news as you know, as they listen to various media organisations. We're going to have to think about how we actually send that information out to our clients. But we know from the multiple phone calls and letters that we've had from clients is this. For the younger clients, they are going to be concerned and some quite devastated by that. And again, you know, their interest is too. They've had their abusive experiences. They're actually still suffering deeply from the damage caused by that. And a lot of them are in prison now. You know, a lot of them are doing really poorly because of, you know, that's that's the way that abuse affects people. It's just, you know, devastating. And so I think to have not have this forum is a way that can actually look at their concerns and actually impact, as I say, hopefully in a positive way on the way in which children now in care and in the future in New Zealand are looked after. I think they'll find that really hard to handle.
So their only option, as far as you can see it, is to take it to court, which is obviously long and arduous. But the government, and this is what was said at the press conference today, is they need to put a full stop somewhere, is their point. You know, the inquiry will last 4 years as it is. The final report is off in 2023 and it's costing almost $80 million. There needs to be a line in the sand. Do you accept that?
Oh, look, I accept there needs to be a line in the sand, but at the end of the day, if we're doing a royal commission, it should be done once and it should be done right. And I think, you know, we've got what, 6,300 children currently in care in New Zealand. Huge numbers of care in New Zealand. And we know from all the reports that have been issued even in recent years that, you know, abuse is it's not a phenomenon that belongs to the past. It is still very much in New Zealand's present history. And what, are we going to have another Royal Commission in another 20 years to deal with the abuse that the children now in care and our client group who haven't been heard? Are we going to hear from them in 20 years' time?
Or Sonja, is it that they don't want to hear from them, that they don't want to know what is going on now? Do you suspect that might be the case?
Oh, I think that's absolutely the case. I think there is a degree to which this is about, you know, let's pretend that everything is actually all right in New Zealand. Let's pretend that Oranga Tamariki has fixed everything up. And I think that's actually been a part of New Zealand history in terms of dealing with these claims generally is to pretend that it's all been all right, it hasn't been us, no, it wasn't us. Or that it's something of the past instead of confronting that it's actually something that is our present
all right.
and will be our future.
Good to talk to you. That is Sonja Cooper, who's a Wellington-based human rights lawyer, and she specialises in abuse cases.